My name is Dr. Elena Martinez, and I never expected my geology degree would one day save my marriage. But when you're accused of being a gold digger by one of Boston's wealthiest real estate developers, sometimes the only way to fight back is with actual gold. The day everything changed started like any other Christmas at the Bradford estate. Snow fell softly on the manicured grounds of the $15 million mansion, and inside, the scent of expensive wine mingled with tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I stood in front of the antique mirror in the guest bathroom, adjusting my simple black dress, the same one Richard Bradford Sr. had sneered at last year for being off the rack. "You look beautiful," my husband Thomas said, appearing behind me. His reflection showed the worry lines that had become permanent fixtures since we'd married 3 years ago. "Maybe we should skip dinner and—" "No," I cut him off gently. "Your father already thinks I'm pulling you away from the family. We're doing this." If only I'd known then that this would turn into the most dramatic dinner in Bradford family history. I'd met Thomas at a charity gala where I was presenting research on sustainable mining practices. He was there representing Bradford Development and during another of his father's attempts to groom him for the family business. Thomas had other plans. He wanted to open a community health clinic. It was his compassion, not his trust fund, that made me fall in love with him. But Richard Bradford Sr. had never seen it that way. The massive dining room was decorated like a magazine spread, crystal glasses catching the light from the chandelier, fine china placed with military precision, and tension sitting like an unwelcome guest at the table. Richard Sr. sat at the head, his new wife Victoria, his fourth, draped in diamonds beside him. Thomas's younger sister Rachel was there with her hedge fund manager husband, both of them tapping away at their phones. "Elena," Richard Sr. said my name like it tasted bitter. "I trust you're still playing with rocks at the university." "I'm leading the department's new research initiative," I replied evenly, taking my seat. "We're developing advanced geological survey techniques for sustainable resource development." He waved his hand dismissively. "If you wanted to understand real estate development, you should have asked me. But then again, you found your own way to get into the industry, didn't you?" Thomas tensed beside me. "Father." "Actually, I cut in. I've been meaning to ask you about Osprey Island." The crystal glass in Richard's hand paused halfway to his lips. The 300-acre private island off the Massachusetts coast was his latest acquisition, bought for pennies on the dollar from a desperate seller. He'd been bragging about turning it into an ultra-luxury resort. "What about it?" "I was curious why you haven't started development yet. It's been 6 months since the purchase." His eyes narrowed. "Zoning issues, nothing that concerns you." I nodded, taking a sip of wine. "Interesting. And the geological surveys?" "Already done. Everything's fine." "Really?" "Because I couldn't find them in the public records." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Rachel finally looked up from her phone. "Are you investigating me?" Richard's voice carried a warning. "No," I said calmly. "I'm investigating the island. It's fascinating, actually. The mineral composition, the rock formations. Did you know it sits on a very unique geological structure?" "Enough." He slammed his hand on the table, making the crystal dance. "I won't be interrogated by a gold-digging academic who tricked her way into my family." Thomas stood up so quickly his chair fell backward. "Don't you dare speak to my wife that way." But Richard was on a roll, his face flushed with anger and expensive bourbon. He rose to his full height, pointing at me with trembling fury. "This gold digger married my son for money," he announced to the stunned room. "She's been trying to undermine our family business from day one. Well, I won't have it. Thomas, it's time to choose, your inheritance or her." The room fell silent. Rachel's husband actually started recording on his phone, The Vulture. I stood up slowly, smoothing my dress. "Interesting timing," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Since I just finished the geological survey of your worthless island." Richard's face went from red to white so fast I worried about his blood pressure. "What?" "Oh yes. Being a professor has its perks. Access to all sorts of sophisticated equipment. Did you know there are significant rare earth mineral deposits under that island? The kind that tech companies are desperate for. The kind that would make the land worth about 50 times what you paid for it." "You're lying," he whispered. "The official survey report will be filed with the state tomorrow morning. I wanted to tell you privately." As a courtesy to family, I picked up my purse. "I guess we're not really family though, are we?" You can't, he sputtered. That's my property. Yes, it is, and now everyone at this table knows exactly what it's worth, including the state regulators who'll be very interested in why this information wasn't disclosed in the original sale. I turned to Thomas. Ready to go home, honey? Thomas was staring at his father with a mix of disgust and revelation. You knew, didn't you? That's why you rushed the purchase through. Richard's silence was all the confirmation we needed. The report arrives tomorrow, I said, heading for the door. Merry Christmas, everyone. Oh, and Victoria, you might want to talk to your lawyer about that prenup. I have a feeling your husband's assets are about to become a matter of public record. We walked out of the mansion into the snowy night, leaving behind the sounds of chaos erupting in the dining room. Thomas took my hand as we reached the car. He shook his head in amazement. Just the beginning, I finished for him. Your father's about to learn that some gold diggers actually know how to find gold. The next morning would bring changes that would reshape the Bradford family forever, and prove that sometimes the best revenge isn't just finding treasure, it's exposing the real pirates. The morning after Christmas dawned clear and cold, but the temperature outside had nothing on the chill running through Boston's business community. I sat in my university office, watching my computer screen as the Geological Survey report sent ripples through the financial world. Bradford development stock halted after rare earth discovery, read the Bloomberg headline. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since 9 a.m. when the report hit the public records. Dr. Martinez? My research assistant poked her head in. There's a Ms. Rachel Bradford here to see you. I looked up, surprised. Thomas's sister was the last person I expected to see. Send her in. Rachel walked in, looking distinctly uncomfortable in the academic setting. Her Hermes bag probably cost more than my monthly salary. But for the first time since I'd known her, she wasn't projecting her usual confidence. Your secretary wouldn't let me pass without an appointment, she said, hovering by the door. Research assistant, I corrected. And she's doing her job. Have a seat. Rachel perched on the edge of my visitor's chair, looking around at the geological maps and core samples that decorated my office. This is quite something. It's not the Bradford Building's marble lobby, but it suits me. I leaned back. What can I do for you, Rachel? She took a deep breath. Dad's in the hospital. My heart skipped. What happened? Panic attack, they think. After the report went public, the SEC announced an investigation into the Osprey Island purchase. Something about failure to disclose material information. Then the environmental protection group started calling about endangered species on the island. She ran a hand through her perfectly styled hair. It's a mess. I'm sorry about your father's health, I said carefully, but the investigation isn't my doing. The law requires full disclosure in property transactions. Cut the crap, Elena, Rachel snapped, then immediately seemed to regret her tone. Sorry, I need to understand. How long have you known about the minerals? I pulled a file from my drawer and handed it to her. Inside were satellite surveys, compositional analyses, and preliminary findings dating back months. I've been studying similar deposits all along the coastline. When your father bought the island, it fit the geological profile. I ran the tests to confirm my theory. And you waited until Christmas dinner to reveal it because I wanted to give him a chance to do the right thing, I said quietly. I tried asking about the surveys. If he had been honest, admitted he knew about the deposits. Rachel was flipping through the papers, her expression growing more troubled. These projected values, they're in the billions. Which is why the SEC is involved. Your father bought the island for $40 million from the Sullivan estate. The executor was in debt, needed a quick sale. Your father pushed it through before any surveys could be done. He knew, Rachel whispered. That's why he was so angry when you started asking questions. I nodded. The real question is how many other people knew? The banks that financed the deal, the board members who approved it. Rachel's head snapped up. I'm on that board. Yes, you are. The implication hung in the air between us. Rachel stood abruptly and began pacing. I didn't know. Dad always handles the technical details. We trust him. Maybe that's the problem. She stopped pacing and faced me. What do you want? Excuse me? To make this go away, name your price. I felt a familiar disappointment settle in my chest. You still don't get it, do you? This isn't about money. It's about right and wrong. Right and wrong won't save our company. She threw the file on my desk. Do you have any idea what this investigation could do? The contracts we could lose. The jobs at stake. I stood up slowly. I do. I also know that those rare earth minerals are crucial for green technology development. They could help transition entire industries away from harmful practices. But your father was going to sit on them, probably sell them quietly to the highest bidder. You self-righteous. A knock at the door interrupted her. Thomas walked in, stopping short when he saw his sister. Rachel? What are you doing here? Trying to save our family business, she said bitterly. Not that you care. Thomas shut the door behind him. Actually, I do care. That's why I just came from a meeting with the board. Both Rachel and I stared at him. What? He pulled out his phone and showed us an email. As of an hour ago, I'm the new interim CEO of Bradford Development. The board voted to suspend Dad pending the investigation. Rachel collapsed back into the chair. They can't do that. He owns controlling interests. Not anymore, Thomas said grimly. Mom's estate lawyer called this morning. Remember that trust Dad was supposed to transfer to us on our 30th birthdays? The one he kept saying had technical delays. Rachel's face went pale. No. He never set it up. He used Mom's money to fund his own projects, including the island purchase. The silence that followed was deafening. Rachel looked like she might be sick. There's more, Thomas continued. Elena, remember that community health initiative you helped me design? I nodded. Thomas had spent months developing a plan to use company resources to build medical centers in underserved areas. The board wants to implement it, but with a twist. He smiled at me. They want to partner with your department. Sustainable development, clean energy using those rare earth minerals, and healthcare infrastructure all in one program. They're trying to get ahead of the scandal, Rachel said, but she sounded uncertain. Maybe, Thomas acknowledged. Or maybe they're realizing that doing the right thing can also be good business. My computer pinged with a new email. The State Environmental Protection Office wanted to meet about incorporating wildlife conservation into any future development plans for the island. Rachel stood up again, but this time with purpose. I need to call an emergency shareholders meeting. If we move fast, we might be able to turn this around. She paused at the door. Elena, I'm sorry about everything. After she left, Thomas came around my desk and pulled me into his arms. You okay? I leaned into him, finally letting myself feel the weight of everything that had happened. Your father will recover. Maybe this is what he needed, a wake-up call. And us. He kissed my forehead. We're going to change things. Together. The brilliant geologist and the doctor, building something better than luxury resorts. I looked at the satellite image of Osprey Island on my wall. From above, it looked like a jewel set in the Atlantic. You know, there's something poetic about this. Your father called me a gold digger, but what I really found wasn't gold at all. It was something much more valuable. The minerals? The truth. 6 months later, I stood on the shores of Osprey Island, watching as construction crews broke ground on the first sustainable mining operation of its kind on the East Coast. Beside it, the framework of a state-of-the-art medical research center rose against the sky. Thomas stood next to me, reviewing plans with the project manager. Richard Bradford Sr. had emerged from the hospital a changed man. The SEC investigation was ongoing, but his cooperation and the company's new direction under Thomas's leadership had gone a long way toward making amends. He even started showing up at community meetings, listening more than talking. Rachel had thrown herself into the environmental aspects of the project, discovering a passion for conservation she never knew she had. Last week, she'd asked me to help her apply to graduate school for environmental management. As for me, I still teach at the university, but now I also head up Bradford Development's new Sustainable Resources Division. Turns out being a gold digger with a PhD in geology can be pretty useful in the family business. The island's treasures were being used to build something meaningful: clean energy technology, medical research, wildlife preservation. It wasn't what Richard Bradford Sr. had planned, but it was worth far more than any luxury resort. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone's empire. Sometimes it's about showing them a better way to build one. A better way to be family. Victoria, by the way, did talk to her lawyer about that prenup. She's now on the board of our charitable foundation. focusing on education initiatives for underprivileged women. Turns out she had been looking for a way to make a difference too. As the sun set over the Atlantic, painting the sky in shades of gold, I thought about that Christmas dinner that had changed everything. The accusations, the anger, the word gold digger thrown like a weapon. Thomas squeezed my hand. "What are you thinking about?" I smiled. "Just that your father was right, in a way. I did marry into this family for riches." I gestured at the island, the construction, the future rising before us. Just not the kind he thought. The next board meeting is next week. Richard Sr. will be there, not as CEO, but as part of the family. He stopped calling me gold digger. Now he calls me Dr. Martinez. And sometimes, when he thinks no one is listening, he calls me daughter. They say success is the best revenge. But I've learned that the best revenge isn't success at all. It's showing others how to succeed with integrity. Sometimes the real treasure isn't what's buried in the ground. It's what we choose to build on top of it.